Dear comrades, I'm extremely sorry that I cannot be physically present with you today, but I want to join you in mourning the death of our late and beloved comrade Avtar Jouhl, and equally importantly, to celebrate his life and his life's work. When Avtar came to Britain, racism was blatant and rampant and very overt indeed. Black people were insulted at every corner. They faced discrimination at work, in housing, and in social life, like public bars, where they were not allowed to drink in certain areas of the public houses. Avtar waged a vigorous struggle against this discrimination and organized workers in the Midlands area, especially in Birmingham, to fight against this discrimination. Discrimination in housing, discrimination at work. Sometimes he was in the awkward position of having to fight even his fellow trade unionists who went along with this discrimination. And the situation has considerably improved. The very public houses where Avtar was denied a drink now are run and owned by Indians. And if that is the case, it is in no small measure due to the struggle that the Indian Workers Association, with Avtar as one of the leaders, waged against this discrimination. I have read, if not all, most of the obituaries that have been written after the death of Avtar. They pay a glowing tribute to his struggle against racism and, of course, his work in the unions. This is correct, and he's rightly commended for that work. But to restrict Avtar's work to just the fight against racism and the unionization of the workers is to actually present a distorted and very limited picture of Avtar. He was a far bigger person than just somebody fighting against racism or somebody fighting for the unionization of the workers. Commendable though both these tasks were. Avtar, like most of the leaders of the IWA, among them Jagmohan Joshi, Teja Singh Sahota, were guided by three principles. First, they came as foreigners to work in Britain and faced discrimination. They fought against that discrimination vigorously, mobilizing in the process thousands of workers, including white proletarians. But they never lost sight of one fact, that the question of racial discrimination was not a question of color or humanitarianism. It was a class question. Race was used as a tool by the British ruling class to divide the working class, to make it impotent in its struggle against capitalist exploitation. And that was something which distinguished Avtar from ordinary trade unionists. He was not frightened of bringing the question of Marxism-Leninism to the working class. There are a lot of cowardly and craven people who won't mention Marxism-Leninism in case it frightens the working class. Avtar was not one of them. He valiantly stood for his principles. So the question was not of dividing black workers against white workers, but it was a question of uniting both of them in the struggle, on the one hand against racial discrimination, which weakens the working class movement, but on the other hand in uniting them in their common struggle against exploitation and for the betterment of the working class as a whole. And it's a tribute to Avtar, among other leaders of the IWA, that they were able to mobilize literally tens of thousands of people in demonstrations and other manifestations of their resistance against racial discrimination. The second thing that guided Avtar, as indeed did the leadership of the Indian Workers Association, was that the workers had come here not because of the warm welcome they received in Britain, but because of the fact that their homelands had been so run down and left so weak and bereft of economic opportunity by imperialism and colonialism that they could only make a living by migrating to foreign countries. So to him, the struggle was not only against racial discrimination, but against imperialism, which was the root cause of their trouble. And in this struggle, Avtar realized that the struggle of the British working class for its emancipation, social emancipation, would be nothing if the workers in Britain did not support the national liberation struggles of the oppressed people. In this context, there was not a single national liberation struggle that Avtar did not support, from the struggle of the Vietnamese people and their heroic fight against American imperialist genocidal war waged against the Vietnamese people, which claimed the lives of 4 million people, Vietnamese and other Indonesians. The struggle of the Palestinian people against murderous Zionism, which has stolen the Palestinians' land and has been oppressing them for close to a century, but especially since the establishment of the state, the racist Zionist state of Israel. The support of the peoples in Southern Africa, South Africans, Zimbabweans, Namibians, Mozambicans, other people in that area who fight against British and Portuguese colonialism. And of course, on top of all that, Avtar was perfectly clear that the working class could fight against racial discrimination in the conditions of imperialism. It could fight for the unionization, but none of that would lead to the salvation of the working class. It was only through socialism and the overthrow of the bourgeois rule that the working class could at last begin to live a life of decency and prosperity and peace. And it was in this context he was very keen to propagate the ideas of Marxism-Leninism. A lot of workers, a lot of trade union leaders, a lot of even people who call themselves socialists are not prepared to take these ideas to the working class because they're always worried that it will frighten the workers to actually mention Marxism-Leninism. It's like telling a person suffering from malaria that you mustn't really administer quinine to him in case it frightens the patient. We in the working class, especially in Britain, have been very backward in matters of theory. And this theoretical backwardness is one of the chief causes of the subjugation of the British working class by the bourgeoisie, notwithstanding the splendid organization that they have had for over 100 years in trade unions. And Avtar was very keen on actually stressing the importance of the achievements made by the working class in the countries where socialist revolution had taken place, like Russia, China, Vietnam, North Korea, Cuba, and countries of Eastern and Central Europe. He was a big supporter of the Stalin Society, whose job has been and continues to be to defend the achievements of socialism in the Soviet Union in the periods of Lenin and Stalin, especially Stalin, for 30 whole long years. He was a great friend of the Soviet Union. He was a great friend of People's Republic of China and supported the Chinese Revolution and supported the ideas of Chairman Mao. It's not very much possible for me to actually expand on Avtar's activities. There are too many to be included in a brief message. But I just wanted to put a corrective to the ordinary obituaries which actually pander to the prejudices of the working class, which have been cultivated very carefully by the British bourgeoisie, where you don't mention socialism, you don't mention Marxism-Leninism, and of course, you don't mention Stalin, you don't mention North Korea. Avtar was not afraid of doing so. Finally, I'd like to say he was a member of my party, a very prominent member of my party, and the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. He not only was a member, but actively supported the party in all its activities, and he helped the party to collect funds, whether it were funds needed for establishing its own printing facilities or for any other activities, because he well understood that the working class, which cannot pay for its own activities, which cannot run its own newspaper, and it's in this context he was a great supporter of the party's paper, the Proletarian, as well as, of course, the fraternal paper, Lalkar. Because if the working class cannot afford to pay for these activities, it does not deserve to be liberated. And this was extremely important to him. And really, finally, he was at his, as Paul Jagan-Mindy would attest, a loving father who honored the memory of his wife, Manjeet, who sadly died rather young. He was a loving grandfather. He was a great comrade and a friend. And even when one had one's differences with him, it was a joy to meet with him, because in the final analysis you could find that Avtar was amenable to discussion and argument and reaching a consensus. And with these words, I say farewell to Comrade Avtar, and I honor his memory. He shall be sorely missed, but also he shall always be an inspiring figure that will encourage other comrades to follow that line and fight against exploitation and imperialism. Thank you very much.